said was, you go to Russia and you see naked the skeletal version of the corruption that in America is beautifully dressed and doesn't even look like corruption. It looks like the media or show business or whatever it might be. Now I'm going to insert something just because I've wanted to say it. If I don't insert it now, I'll forget it. But it sort of touches on what we're talking about. And because this is a freestyle show, I had a correspondent, a friend, somebody who went to Washington with the new administration, who wasn't in politics before, was new to DC, and came in at a pretty high level, and wrote me the other day and said, wow, I found out the secret to everything that's going on here. And I said, what is it? And they said, it's a term called cold equity. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, people talk about it all the time. Do you have cold equity in that? How much cold equity do you have in that project? And what it means is when you as a government employee have done favors for industry that you can't capitalize on until you leave government, you have cold equity in something. So let's say you have cold equity in the Lockheed freeze ray. You got it through the process. You got it approved. You got the contract, paid for. You now have cold equity in it. And when you leave, it becomes hot equity. And this guy told me, this is Washington. Everybody who's there working long hours, for 15 years in some faceless bureaucratic job, getting paid $163,000 at their peak, is actually doing it because they're establishing cold equity in some product, service, regulation, or something. And he said, they look at you and say, what do you got cold equity in? And if you say nothing, he said, it's like one of those cop movies where the corrupt cops are like, try to bring the new guy into the theft, the burglary ring, or the shakedown ring, and he won't do it. And
right, yes, like the Serpico moment, yeah,
yeah, the Serpico moment. And he said, like, if you don't have cold equity in something that you're bragging about, they don't trust you.
That's right. You got to be on the pad.
They're like, what are you doing here?
Right.
We came here to get cold equity in the freeze ray or the housing project or whatever it is, and.
I'm sorry.
If you don't have a dishonest reason to be here in Washington, get the fuck out. And I went, well, that's it. I just saw the unified field theory. It's cold equity. All these drones, all those, when you go to Washington, there's all these like people. They always have like a William and Mary T-shirt. They're 31. They're jogging. They're staying in shape. And
rock hard abs. Yep.
Rock hard abs. But they work but like, shouldn't you be down in New York working for like Citadel Capital or, something where you're working on your yacht? Like, why the hell you went to William and Mary? You're good looking. You're fit. You've got abs. What are you doing here? Well, the answer is getting cold equity. And I think that the hostility to Trump can be explained by this. When Trump came in 2016, there were all these schlubs, tens of thousands of schlubs across Washington who had spent fucking 20 years getting cold equity in various projects that, Hillary was going to pay off on. They were going to leave. She was going to shunt the contract, and they're fucking cold equity. It's like they got debanked. It was like corruption debanking. Now what the hell do I have? I spent all this time getting this contract for all these people so that I could join this fucking, freeze ray firm out in Torrance, California. And now it's fucking done.
That's such a, they spent all those years sort of deep throating the cold equity shaft. And now you want to convert it into hot equity by writing James Patterson's Mein Kampf. Right.
And he said it's true. It's true of every one-star general. It's true of every bureaucrat above a certain line. It's true of all of them. They're all waiting for their damn payoff. And, they probably even have a cold equity like spouse out there, like their current spouse. They're going to burn as soon as they get,
gonna get the real spouse.
Yeah, they're gonna get the hot equity spouse out in Laguna Beach or wherever, you know. So,
or Sevastopol, more likely.
Right. You
Yeah.
know, but anyway, I really do, and I'm quite serious, think that this guy. So I said to him, he said, when they ask me why my wife and I are here, what kind of cold equity you got, and we can't answer, they're like, so what the hell are you doing here? Like, he was being literal. This was not a joke. And I said, well, you have to come up with some fake corruption then.
Right.
You have to answer yes to that question and say, you know, actually we have a simultaneous translation software program that we're getting into the CIA, and when we leave, you know, we're going to become board members,
right,
and sell it to Bertelsmann or Penguin,
right.
And I said, you're going to need a story, or they're going to off you. You know, you're going to wake up in the bunk one night with everybody like pounding you with baseball bats.
Okay, so that's the formula. You build up the cold equity, you get out, you join the board of sort of blood-sucking Vampire Corporation Inc., right? Or Blood-Sucking Vampire Incorporated, and then you write Mein Kampf to get a little extra. It's like two ways of liquidating or monetizing.
Well, but you see, the thing about this that's interesting is that the cold equity gatherers are smart. They stay below the line. They're not, you know, they're not above the line talent. They don't get their names on the marquees. You know, one time I was driving around Hollywood, and I was watching all the beautiful cars go by in Santa Monica or something. And I was with somebody who lived there, and I said, you know, the movies aren't that successful. TV's not that big a deal. Like, where do all these cars come from? And they said, lawyers, you know, people fighting over movies that don't get made, people suing each other, people, you know, serving food to whatever, like all the ancillary stuff. Those are the smart people. The stars are the sacrificial lambs. We've got to put them up there to capture the imagination of America. But really, all the money's in this vast, like, you know.
Yeah, Jeff Connaughton called it the blob, right, in Washington. But
right, yeah, exactly. And so the cold equity people know to keep their heads down. Like, they get out with like, I got out with 17 million, not a fucking scratch on me, dude. Nobody knows my name. Let's go look at my boat.
So that's why politicians suck so much, is because they're trying to build up cold equity so they can get paid later for their bad ideas now.